Uh, Hello, everyone, and welcome to the special Earth Day episode of Bridging the ESG Data Gap. I'm your host, Mish Masfer. I'm an associate data engineer at Hypernym, and it's April 22nd, 2025. Around the world, we're reflecting on this year's theme: Our Power, Our Planet. Um, Before we dive in, I would like to introduce you to our expert here, Elizabeth. She is a environment engineer and leadership advisor. Hello, Elizabeth. Um, you've had
Hi.
a fascinating journey from environmental engineering, HEC management, leadership consultancy. What sparked your interest in sustainability?
Brilliant. Thanks. I'd love to kick off with that answer. So I think sustainability is so important for each and every one of us today. And my commitment to sustainability really started even in my younger days, where I was trying to decide what I wanted to study at university. It led to the environment engineering. But actually, what it was when my first role was ever as a first paid employment was as a fishmonger. And so I saw the strain on our resources, the short shelf life of fish, the amount of bleach
Hmm.
that you need to keep the store clean. And all those kind of things started to get me thinking when I was, a 17-year-old, about the role of the environment, development, and industry. And that then led me to do the environmental engineering, before then moving into different roles at the energy company at Shell in the UK. And I worked across a range of different roles as an environmental engineer and also in health and safety,
Hmm.
um, in upstream, downstream shipping operations before moving to Egon Zehnder, and looked at how leadership at the top levels of organizations can shape sustainability outcomes. So, very excited to be here on the podcast today and, explore a bit more of my own reflections on sustainability and, data in the age of IoT, and also the great work that Hypernym is doing, how we can design systems and cultures that contribute to long-term environmental and social well-being. So thanks, excited about it.
Absolutely. I'm excited for this year's theme as well and how IoT can be brought into the discussion. The goal for this year for Earth Day is to triple renewable energy capacity by 2030. What does the theme Our Planet, Our Power mean to you, both personally and professionally?
So I love the theme this year because it really hones into the fact that every one of us every day can have a role to play in shaping the future of energy and climate action. And it goes beyond just the grid scale infrastructure, the national policy. I like to think that it's the choices we can make every day. So that's at my own personal level. I think we can make changes from taking the public transport to turning the desktop monitor off when we leave the office. And the best thing about this is when I mean, we might think that it's minor in isolation, but when we have, our teams, our colleagues, the community doing all of these things, it it does build up to a collective response. And then, from a professional level, which I've carried on since my age of 17, um, there's a sense of urgency and a sense of accountability in the work that I do, helping leaders drive meaningful sustainability efforts. And I think it's through the support of data,
Mhm.
discussions at the board level, discussions at the executive level, right through to operationalizing sustainability within the organization. So
Hmm.
I think tripling our renewable energy capacity by 2030 is certainly ambitious, but I think with the combination of leadership, strategic use of data and technology, like IoT and the sensors, it's really within reach.
I love that message. Everyday decisions, urgency, accountability. It sort of ties into this visionary aspect of humanity, where everybody needs to make a collective effort. And that effort can be streamlined with sustainable leadership. Given that Hypernym is an IoT based company and our expertise revolves around the Internet of Things, could you, in your own words, explain like what IoT is and how does it relate to this powerful message of sustainability leadership today?
Great question. So yeah, love to start with the description of IoT. As you mentioned, Internet of Things. And in my own words, it's taking a network of physical devices that are embedded with sensors, and it's a collection of that data coming together and exchange. It's not only collection of data, but exchanging that information. And in the context of sustainability, the IoT can then it's monitoring that data real time. So we're getting the metrics coming through like emissions, the energy use, the waste data collection, it all together. Um, and it's beyond just what you see in an ESG report, which is maybe on a quarterly basis or an annual basis. You're getting live insights and you can drive those decisions straight away when they're coming in on a dashboard, for example. So I think this is a game changer. When I think back to my Shell days, we like early Shell days, data was coming in on, say, a monthly basis. But now with the IoT, you're seeing something, you know, to the minute. It's there in front of you, and leaders can use this data to act quickly, prevent issues. If you were, for example, getting to a level where, so my time at Shell, there was quite a lot of changes around the shipping, and being able to, if you do a voyage from A to B, um, there's a certain amount of emissions you can have now that the regulations have changed. You can get borderline where it might become an issue with how much you emit as a vessel. And so if you have that data live and you know that actually if you're going to sail from A to B and that might just switch the vessel to a different rating, carbon intensity index rating, you can change that decision. You can influence the key decision makers in that area. So, getting the sensors, getting the automation, I think it's a really great thing. And, before I delve into anything further, it would be great to hear a bit more about the work that Hypernym is doing.
I mean, sure, absolutely. From the way also that you've described everything, the way that you've like painted a picture about how IoT is combining sustainability leadership, it's kind of reflective of the whole idea of urgency, accountability, networking.
Mm,
So Hypernym tried to do something similarly with a little case study we have in Dubai.
mm,
We basically offered smart technology to a mosque to track air quality in that area, track temperature, lighting, basically using sensor data to visualize a lot of the inner happenings of that mosque. And what ended up happening is we were able to offer more efficient, recommendations to them, like how much energy usage they need to sort of manage, if they need to increase their power usage, decrease their power usage, flagging moments where there's like an extra amount of usage. There were certainly challenges
mm,
along the way, but I feel like that was a positive step and like a very community centered location. A lot of people can see
mm.
real time the effects of like what IoT can do for everybody, especially for environment reporting. You
And I think,
mentioned that, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, sorry.
I was going to just say, and I think with the example you shared, and also, my experiences as well, the value of the IoT is the accuracy of the data as well. There's not, someone typing in the numbers. It's actually, it's kind of an automated process. And so you're not going to have those kind of human errors as much as, if it was someone
And
there. So I think that's a really good benefit. I think that also empowers employees to learn more about sustainability, take the data, really make meaning out of it, rather than just sitting there with a huge administrative burden on their side, they can actually go out and start transforming sustainability as well.
I
So yeah,
right? And in terms of like environment reporting in action, you would rather know when you're using when you're over consuming electricity
yeah,
right there in that real time moment so that you can power off whatever you're using.
yeah,
It seems quite silly
definitely.
to get like a historical report, um, like, oh yes, you overused electricity,
Mm,
2 hours later. You can't do anything about it. Um,
yeah, very
do,
true, very true.
in terms of this, by the way, recording the data and like analyzing the data, you said that you worked at Shell and you were
Mhm.
digitizing environment and HSE data, particularly in the maritime sector. Could you share a bit more about your experiences there?
Yeah, great. So this is, yeah, I mean, when I think back, this is probably even before IoT really kicked off. But we were having the data in spreadsheets, fuel consumption data, and when you have data in spreadsheets, like you can't really make a lot of meaning out of it. And so we really wanted to make it accessible for everyone within the organization on a dashboard and make it real time. So every morning, a superintendent could go in and see the performance of his vessel. And so I worked on converting that spreadsheet data into very much a visual environment where you can track, and you've got almost like a speedometer to know how your vessel is performing. And it also freed up the of administration reporting, where they could then focus on other things. And
Mm,
this is in the early days, but now when I think about with the introduction of IoT, with the sensors, like this is even more exciting because it's advanced so much as well since when I was setting up um, the transformation of or digitizing the environmental and HSC data. um, so I think, yeah, no, today is even more exciting. So yeah.
yeah, like you can almost imagine from boring spreadsheets to dashboards that you just look at and you're like, okay, we need to do X, Y, Z. Combine that with good administration and regulatory oversight. Do you uh, do you think that we will be able to, expedite the whole process of digitizing that data?
I think so. I mean, this kind of comes down to obviously the leadership, the decision from the organization, and making sure that they have definitely a desire and push to
Hmm.
really, implement things like the IoT, the dashboards, because otherwise, I don't want us to be stuck in the dark ages of spreadsheets anymore. And so if organizations come together and say, look, let's have the common goal of recording getting tracking the data, putting it into the dashboard, putting the sensors on, um, then the information can also be shared because we've got the scope 3 emissions, which is where you're trying to map the whole supply chain, which can be quite complex. But when you have things like IoT with sensors and dashboards, and it's much more readily able to share, you're much more readily able to share the information. And then that can allow you to start making change, beyond just your own organization, all the
I mean,
stakeholders that you are connected with.
hmm. I yeah, that actually your allegory of the dark ages is pretty apt because I was wondering about like the dark ages of spreadsheets. Are there any
Yeah.
blind spots in those dark ages? Do you think that the way that companies are tracking emissions today, a lack of IoT in most of the sectors,
Mhm.
what are some of the the dark spots, if you will?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, no, good question. Um, so yeah, I definitely going back to that point about the spreadsheets, I think it's shifting from that static where we're looking backward in reporting to actually going real time and data driven approach. So it's like if you're waiting for your quarterly emission or your monthly emission report, it's it's already out of date by the time it reaches the decision makers where you want to make change, which is what we're saying. And with the example, you also shared what Hypernim's been doing with in the case study there. So that's one. I think the other flip side of that is the
Hmm.
underuse of the data. That's also a blind spot because you
Oh.
can collect so much information, but then if you don't
Mm.
have the culture or the tools to act on it, like
Mm.
nothing's going to happen anyway. So that's one. And then definitely going back to the scope three, being able to map the indirect emissions across a company's supply chain,
Mhm.
we can be, that's a big challenge. Everyone's talking about that.
Mm.
So that's where I think where IoT comes in. We put we're really tracking that information and helping us identify the things. Another one, for example, is the type, like if we go on the emissions, for example,
Mhm.
black carbon, or there's other emissions that, are not traditionally
Mm.
included in the emissions tracking in the reports because it's been quite difficult to
Mm.
measure in the past. But now with IoT enabled sensors, um, companies can actually start to detect and quantify
Oh.
black carbon, for example. So it does
Could
take a lot
we?
of investment though and
Mm.
collaboration, that's for sure. So yeah,
I mean, could we like zoom in on black carbon for a moment?
sure.
Like, what is carbon? And from the way that you make it sound like, it sounds like it's critically important. Why does it matter? And why can you
Yeah,
track it? How can you track it?
yeah, no, good question. It did come up. It's quite an important emission, something to consider, especially, I mean, for example, in shipping, it's talked about
Mm-hmm.
because of the types of engines and fuel, types of, heavy fuel oil. So black carbon is referred to as a short-lived climate pollutant. It's not like your CO2, which lingers in the atmosphere for centuries. Black carbon only stays, from days to weeks, but it can be incredibly potent, and it does have a powerful warming effect. Black carbon is coming from the incomplete combustion of the fossil fuels, and the biomass or the diesel, and you get that in engines like in ships. Um, and so, in the case today, it is still being underrepresented, and it's because we haven't had the ways to track it in real time at the source. But with the work that um, you know, Hypernym, for example, is
Yeah.
working on the sensors and things like that. You can get that information and feed it into the dashboard, and you could think about when is it that I need to upgrade my engine, or
Mm.
insights into switching to cleaner fuels. So um,
Or
it does
even
play.
provide
Yeah,
like
it's an important thing to consider. Go ahead. Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I can even see like leadership roles kind of making the decision to move away from black carbon emitters. If it is that like critically
Mm.
important, given proper and efficient and accurate tracking, I can see them through that evidence saying, "Let's move to more alternative sources of energy. Like this is a huge problem for our environment." Yeah,
Definitely, for sure. Mhm.
I mean, given this whole tracking system, how do you think technology and AI can accelerate sustainability goals, like black carbon tracking, for example? How can we
Mhm.
use AI and technology here better?
Yeah, I think the really cool thing is, so you get the information, you see the information on the dashboard. Um,
Mhm.
what's really cool is you can then actually simulate scenarios and you can predict what could happen in the future,
Hmm.
and then take action before the problem occurs. And I think that's something that we didn't really have established before. And
Hmm.
for example, I think I already mentioned before, like if you're predicting how much emissions your ship or your fleet has already done for 3/4 of the year, and then they're reaching close to where you had your emissions target, you can then start to plan your future voyages, or your future travel distance by saying, okay, well, we definitely need to use an alternative fuel, or we need to look at more fuel efficient engines installed, etc., before we've exceeded what we've set out our goals to be. So I think that's where it's really accelerate, taking the tech and the AI to accelerate progress and then help us make decisions that improve performance within our organizations. It's very exciting.
Yeah, don't you think it like ties back into what you said previously as well about how IoT solutions and real-time tracking is more forward-thinking? So,
Mhm.
given predictive, what if scenarios and all of that, I really love how it opens up discussions. It opens up like
Yep.
forward-thinking solutions, not just like, hey, what have we done and what has worked so far, but what we could do. I really like how that ties into it. Um,
Definitely. Completely agree.
there's a Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a point that you've written before, which I have had a great interest in. It's invisible sustainability leadership.
Mhm.
What types of leadership are we missing or undervaluing today? Do you think?
Mhm. Great question. Yeah, so I wrote about this about a year ago about invisible sustainability leadership,
Hmm.
and I think, yeah, my point to make is that we need to recognize that there are people who are working in sustainability all the time that are not in the spotlight, and but what they are doing is absolutely critical to delivering real change. And I almost think of the engineers at Hypernym, for example. You're working in the background, you're creating the software, or those that have worked developing the sensors. Like, all of that is helping on the sustainability agenda. The analysts, the supply chain leads, the operators, they're turning sustainability from strategy into reality. This is where we're seeing sustainability being operationalized and integrated into businesses. They're solving the complex challenges, and so, I mean, but they're not always in the spotlight. So I think what
Mm,
what I would love to see is a bit more elevating, and seeing, we appreciating the value of these individuals and these professions
mm,
that are supporting sustainability, that they're making it possible.
yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, opening up the conversation for them, giving them spotlight. That's pretty. I appreciate that as well. Like for our engineers, we should definitely the analysts, everything that goes into it, the experts, if you will. Um, Tying back into the Earth Day theme about like our
sure.
power, our planet, a call for collective action, clean energy transformation. Um, these invisible leaders and also the ones in the spotlight, what do you think, what habits do you think they should have to make like the biggest difference? What do you think would be the most momentum inducing
Yeah,
action?
good question. I love this question. And it brings back also one of the key themes that we speak about at Egon Zender is leadership potential, and one of them is on curiosity. So for me, that habit is being curious, and leaders, well, engineers, everyone needs to be curious and willing to be able to explore new technologies. So explore IoT, explore the ability to have sensors in industry, in your operations. Um, ask those challenging questions, being able to embrace change. That's all about being curious. And if you're an organization that's kind of sitting on the fence at the moment around whether to implement, or adopt, say, um, SustainX, which is what Hypernym has, or other kind of IoT related, um, you know getting that set up, test it, pilot it, scale it, have that curiosity to do that rather than just waiting, because being curious, I think, will open to a lot of learning and evolving for the organization, embracing that. So yeah, that's the habit I would say we need to keep doing. Always be curious. Yeah.
Curiosity is power in this case. Do you think that it's not just the emitters that need to implement IoT solutions? Do you think it could also be at smaller scale levels, like around your house or around neighborhoods that are disproportionately affected by carbon emissions? Like, how scalable do you think IoT solutions are in this case?
I think I think they're applicable for everything, and it's really exciting. Buildings, houses, large industry. Yeah, I think it's applicable everywhere. We just need to embrace that. So bring
Hmm.
on the IoT. Yeah, bring it on.
Um, To sort of tie our entire conversation to wrap it up, Elizabeth, I would like to present you a what if scenario. If you had 30 seconds to speak to every business leader on earth today, what would your message be? How would you how would you encourage them?
Great question. So for leaders, just getting started, these are my three key tips. First, start with visibility. Get the data. You can't improve what you can't measure. So look at your IoT tools, whether you can track the emissions. Can you get access to view your energy usage? Even think about black carbon, and take all the information so you can get the real time insight into into what's going on within your operations, and then you can see where those biggest opportunities of impact can be. The second thing is, don't wait to be perfect. There's no need for the perfection here. If you delay, I think that's going to have a more detrimental impact. Waiting for that perfect ESG strategy, you know, forget that. It's about starting small. Think about, can you put energy system, can you pilot a smart energy system? Think about, the IoT. Can you digitalize some of your value chain? Can you integrate your dashboard into your reporting process? So start now. No need to wait. And then the third one is, think about yourself as leaders. How do you embed sustainability into leadership? Making sure everyone's included. It's not just about engineering the problem, or compliance through reporting. As leaders, we need to transform this, sustainability, and ask the right questions about data. How are we as an organization resilient? How do we drive impact and unlock real change? So those are my three top tips. That was probably more than 30 seconds, but back over to you now.
Even if it was, it's about the message, is it not? Thank you so
Yeah.
much for your expert advice, for your insight, for your guidance in this journey for Earth Day. And just to reiterate the message about curiosity, about urgency, accountability throughout this podcast, I also highly urge our listeners, our viewers here, to look into the SustainX solutions that we've offered to see how maybe that might be implemented for your environmental reporting, and to sort of also look into the whole landscape of environmental reporting in general. Thank you so much for your time, Elizabeth. Thank you so much for giving people insights on Earth Day. And we hope that you enjoyed these insights. We hope that it benefits you in some way. Um, See you later. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.